My name is Savannah Brooks. I'm 28 years old. And the night my father threw my life onto the lawn, I had just finished a 12-hour shift helping keep a burned Labrador alive. I still smelled like antiseptic and wet fur when I pulled into the driveway and saw my duffel bag split open in the grass, my scrubs tangled around a broken lamp, my winter coat half in the flower bed, and a box of childhood photos dumped upside down like trash. He was standing there in the porch light with his phone up, actually recording me, like humiliating his daughter was content. My mother stood behind him with her arms folded tight across her chest. My sister laughed, nudged one of my tote bins with her sneaker, and sent a stack of framed certificates sliding into the street. "You're 28, my father barked, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You suck us dry like a goddamn vampire. I want you gone. Tonight." The people across the street were sitting on their porch pretending not to stare, but they didn't miss a second. I looked at the phone pointed at my face and smiled straight into the camera. Have you ever been called a parasite by the people who were supposed to love you most? Because in that exact moment, something inside me went cold. I loaded every last thing into my car, without crying, without begging, without giving them the scene they wanted. Then I walked up to all three of them and said, very quietly, "Hope you all sleep good tonight, because one day, none of you are going to sleep at all." Before I tell you what he said next, and what happened after I drove away, tell me, what time is it for you right now and where are you watching from? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. I didn't go to a friend's house first. I didn't sit in some parking lot sobbing either. I drove 3 exits south, parked behind a 24-hour gas station, and listened to the voice memo I'd accidentally recorded while I was gathering my things. My father yelling, my sister laughing, my mother saying, "Just let her go, Richard. She brought this on herself." I replayed it 3 times, not because I enjoyed it, because I needed to hear it clearly enough to never rewrite it later into something softer. Families like mine survive by making you doubt your own memory. By morning, they would have called it a misunderstanding. By next week, they would have said I was dramatic. By Christmas, they would have told everyone I stormed out over nothing. But the recording didn't lie. I spent that first night in an extended stay motel with a flickering bathroom light, 2 vending machine granola bars, and 1 hard rule. I was never going back. Around 1:30 a.m., my phone lit up with 6 missed calls, then 11 messages, then 20. My father demanded to know where I was. My mother said I was acting unstable. My sister sent, "LOL, have fun paying for your own everything." I didn't answer any of them. I took screenshots, made a folder, and named it, "When They Start Lying." Maybe that sounds petty, but when people humiliate you in public, documentation is not pettiness. It's armor. The next morning, I called the only person I trusted to tell the truth, even when it hurt. Noah Carter, the paramedic I'd met 2 years earlier, bringing a seizing beagle into the ER at 3 a.m. Noah didn't open with pity. He said, "Tell me exactly what happened, no protecting them." So I did. Every word, every look, every little piece of theater my father staged for the neighborhood. Noah went silent for a second, then asked, "If they called you tonight crying, would you go back?" I stared at the motel curtain and surprised myself with how fast the answer came. "No. Good," he said. Then stop acting like this is a breakup you might fix. This is a fire you finally walked out of." That landed hard, because he was right. I hadn't been evicted from a loving home. I had escaped a system built on shame. Over burnt coffee in the motel lobby, I opened my photo gallery and deleted every family selfie where I'd been smiling too hard. Birthdays, barbecues, Christmas mornings, that fake normal I'd spent years performing. Then I started looking for rooms to rent, extra shifts, and any opening that would move me closer to the certification program I'd put off for 3 years, because my father kept saying serious careers were for kids who finish what they start. I was already finishing more than he ever saw. Saving animals, holding strangers together in the middle of the night, paying half their groceries when my mother forgot her card. And suddenly, I understood something ugly. They hadn't kicked me out because I was weak. They kicked me out because I'd stopped being useful in the way they liked. Have you ever driven away shaking so hard you could barely grip the wheel but smiling anyway, because deep down you knew the people who mocked you had just made the worst mistake of their lives? I did. And 10 days later, they proved me right. By day 3, I had a weekly rate at the motel, 2 extra overnight shifts at the animal hospital, and exactly $341 left after gas, food, and storage. It should have terrified me more than it did. Instead, I felt weirdly clear. No one was slamming cabinets because I came home late from work. No one was keeping score of how many showers I took. No one was calling me selfish for buying my own protein bars while my sister ordered takeout on my mother's card. At the hospital, chaos made sense. A hit-by-car shepherd came in at 2 a.m., and I moved on instinct, steady hands, clean lines, no panic. My supervisor, Dr. Elaine Mercer, noticed. At the end of the shift, she said, "Savannah, you're already doing the work of someone who should be in our advanced surgical track. Why haven't you applied?" I almost laughed, because what was I supposed to say? That I'd spent years trapped in a house where ambition was treated like betrayal if it didn't benefit everybody else first? Instead, I said, "Bad timing." She looked me dead in the eye and replied, "Then maybe it's finally good timing." That same afternoon, Noah met me outside a diner near the freeway. He slid a yellow legal pad across the table. On it, he'd written 3 things: housing, certification, boundaries. "These are your only priorities," he said. "Not defending yourself, not explaining yourself, not chasing closure." He challenged me again. "Say your father shows up crying. Your mother says she's sick with worry. Your sister says the family is falling apart. What do you do?" I stirred my coffee and said, "I let it fall apart." Noah gave one short nod like I had finally spoken the language of survival. We made a plan. I applied for the hospital's surgical technician certification pathway. I found a room above a retired mechanic's garage owned by a widow named Mrs. Delaney, who charged fair rent and asked no invasive questions beyond whether I smoked or had pets. Then I did something that felt small, but mattered more than I expected. I changed my emergency contact from my mother to Noah. It was one tap on a phone, but it felt like cutting a wire. Meanwhile, the messages from home shifted tone. My father stopped calling me lazy and started asking where the car title paperwork was. My mother wanted to know if I'd moved anything important. My sister texted, "Do you have the login to the utility portal?" There it was. No concern, no apology, just inconvenience. That's when I realized my disappearance had not created grief in that house first. It had created labor. I had been the one who handled the dog's medication refills, the online bill payments, the grocery pickup orders for my mother, and the pharmacy runs when my father was too tired after work. I wasn't a burden. I was unpaid infrastructure. Once I saw that, the whole family story collapsed. By the end of that week, I moved into Mrs. Delaney's garage apartment with 2 duffel bags, a folding chair, and a mattress off Facebook Marketplace. The place smelled faintly like sawdust and old paint. It was perfect. On my first night there, I sat on the floor eating takeout lo mein from the carton, surrounded by unpacked boxes, and listened to the silence. Real silence. Not the loaded kind before an argument. Not the fake, peaceful kind where everybody was one comment away from blood. Actual silence. My phone buzzed again. My father. "This whole little stunt has gone far enough." My sister. "Dad is pissed because you didn't pay Mom's car insurance reminder and now she got a late fee." I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, because it was pathetic. The people who threw my belongings in the yard were now discovering how much of their adult life had quietly rested on the daughter they called useless. And for the first time since I drove away, revenge didn't look like screaming back. It looked like absence. It looked like letting them feel every ounce of the work I used to absorb. Tell me this. If your family only notices your value after you stop carrying them, were they ever really loving you? Or were they just renting your loyalty for free? Days 6 through 10 were when the real unraveling began. I know that because Mrs. Delaney, my new landlady, turned out to know half the subdivision where I grew up. She never gossiped in a mean way, but she believed in facts, and facts kept finding her. On day 6, she knocked on my door with a casserole dish and said, "Honey, your daddy was shouting in the driveway this morning, loud enough for 3 houses." I said nothing, and she added, "Men only get that loud when the audience they wanted didn't clap." Later that night, my sister sent me a long text that started with, "You're unbelievable," and ended with, "Mom cried at Costco." I didn't respond. On day 7, Noah called after his shift and said he'd run a transport call near my old block. "Your father was in the front yard arguing with a cable guy," he said. "Apparently, somebody forgot the account password." Again, not grief. Labor. On day 8, my mother called from a number I didn't know and left a voicemail that began in tears and ended in accusation. She said I was punishing the family, embarrassing them, making the neighbors talk, and turning my father into someone she barely recognized. That part almost made me laugh. Richard Brooks had always been exactly who he was. The only difference now was that his target had left. On day 9 came the message that told me everything had shifted. It wasn't from family. It was from one of my old coworkers whose aunt lived 2 doors down from my parents. "Hey, don't know if this is my place, but people in the neighborhood are talking. Your dad recorded that lawn thing and apparently showed it to somebody at work, like it proved a point. It's backfired. Folks think it makes him look cruel." I read that text 3 times. So did he want me gone? Or did he want a public execution and applause? Because those are not the same thing. I guess he thought humiliating me would make him look like a tough parent, finally forcing his freeloading daughter to grow up. Instead, it made him look like a man who publicly discarded his child for sport. And the beautiful thing about public cruelty is that sometimes the public doesn't side with the cruel person. That same night, my phone started blowing up harder than before. 88 messages in total by 2:30 a.m. "Dad, where the hell are you? Dad, answer me right now. Tessa, dude, Dad's legit freaking out back. Mom at 2:12 a.m. This needs to stop now. Call me back immediately." Then one from my sister that was different from the rest. "He can't sleep." I sat on the edge of my mattress staring at that one. Not because I felt sorry, because I remembered the porch light on my father's face when he told me to get out, how steady he'd looked, how certain. Men like him always think consequences belong to other people. They think tonight's rage disappears by morning and everybody else is supposed to reset. But shame is funny. When it finally circles back, it doesn't knock politely. It pounds. The next afternoon, while I was helping prep a golden retriever for emergency abdominal surgery, Dr. Mercer pulled me aside. My certification application had been accepted. Not only that, the hospital was willing to sponsor most of the cost if I committed to the year-long surgical track. I should have burst into tears on the spot. Instead, I felt this deep, almost private vindication. The same week my father was losing his mind because I stopped managing his household, I was stepping into the career he'd always implied I wasn't serious enough to deserve. That night, after shift, I finally listened to all the voicemails. My father was no longer furious in them. He sounded ragged. My mother sounded panicked. My sister sounded scared in a very selfish, childlike way, the way people sound when the family system that protected them starts turning on them too. Mrs. Delaney told me later she'd heard another screaming match at the house, my father blaming Tessa for starting things on the lawn, Tessa screaming back that he had the phone out first, my mother sobbing that they all needed me to fix this. To fix it. That was the word that got me. Because have you ever wondered whether your family is falling apart because you left? Or because, for the first time, they have no one left to dump the weight on? The answer was finally obvious. I wasn't the cause of their dysfunction. I had been the cushion hiding it. The first time I answered my father after leaving, it was not because I softened. It was because I wanted the truth in his own voice. 10 days after he threw my things outside, he called while I was in the hospital break room eating crackers from a vending machine. I hit record on my phone before I picked up. "What?" I said. He didn't even start with hello. "Where the hell are you?" "At work." "Don't get smart with me." Same tone, same entitlement. As if eviction had been a parenting tactic and not a rupture. He launched into a rant about my mother being stressed, Tessa being impossible, the neighbors talking, bills getting missed, and how I was selfish for disappearing when the family was already under pressure. I let him go. Then he said the thing I'll never forget. "If you don't come home and help settle this, I'll make sure everybody knows what kind of daughter you are." I leaned back in that stiff plastic chair and stared at the hospital wall while a smile spread over my face. There it was. Not concern. Not remorse. Reputation management. Blackmail dressed as family values. "You mean tell people you threw your daughter's belongings onto the lawn while filming it?" I asked. Silence. "Go ahead, Dad." Another silence, shorter this time, but meaner. "You think you're tough now because you've got people filling your head." "No," I said. "I think I'm tough now because I'm hearing my own thoughts for the first time." He started to raise his voice, but I cut in. "And just so we're clear, I recorded this call." The dead air after that was so pure it almost felt holy. He hung up without another word. I sat there for a second, then laughed. Not a cute laugh. The kind that comes out of a person who has finally seen the whole trick. I sent the audio file to a private cloud folder beside the original lawn recording. Then I went back to work and helped stabilize a collapsed husky like my life wasn't changing by the hour. That evening, Dr. Mercer officially offered me the sponsored surgical track spot and a raise with the added responsibilities. I accepted on the spot. She shook my hand and said, "You belong here, Savannah." It was such a simple sentence, but I carried it around like heat in my chest, because at home, belonging had always been conditional. At work, it was earned. When I got back to the apartment, Mrs. Delaney was watering her tomatoes. She looked over and said, "Your old man came by." My stomach dropped. She lifted one shoulder. "Didn't let him in. Told him if he wanted to yell, he could do it from public property where everybody could hear." I could have hugged her. She handed me a folded paper towel with a number written on it. "He left his phone number like you'd somehow misplaced it." Then she said something even better. "By the way, people are talking, and not in the way he hoped. Men who throw women's belongings in the yard usually don't recover socially as well as they think." Apparently, one of the neighbors across the street had told someone at my father's warehouse that the whole incident looked deranged, and from there the story spread. Nothing dramatic. He didn't lose his job or anything unbelievable, but he was being looked at differently, judged, quietly avoided, the kind of consequence that keeps proud men awake at night. My sister texted around midnight. "What did you say to him? He's stomping around like a psycho." I didn't answer. A minute later she added, "Mom says this has gone too far." That one I did answer. I wrote, "It went too far the night he put my life on the lawn." She read it immediately. No reply. What struck me most wasn't that they were suffering. It was that suffering had finally made them aware I existed as a real person, not a role, not a utility, a person. And I know some people would say revenge should be louder, crueler, flashier. But there is a specific kind of revenge in becoming undeniable to the people who built their comfort on denying you. Have you ever heard the same parent who once called you worthless suddenly threaten to ruin your name because deep down they know yours may survive longer than theirs? That was the moment I knew I had already won. 2 days later, my father showed up in person. Not at my old house, not at the motel, but outside Mrs. Delaney's garage apartment just after sunset, right when the streetlights kicked on and the neighborhood got quiet enough for every word to carry. I saw his truck before I saw him. Then came the knock. Hard, impatient, familiar. My body reacted before my mind did. Shoulders tight, pulse up, that old dread waking like it had never left. But I didn't freeze. I opened the door with the chain still on. Richard Brooks looked worse than I had ever seen him. Not broken, not humbled, just frayed. Red-eyed, jaw locked, wearing the same work jacket like he'd slept in it. "We need to talk," he said. "We're talking now," I replied. He glanced past me into the apartment, taking in the second-hand bookshelf, the folding table, the unpacked boxes. I could see the judgment trying to rise in him, but it didn't land the way it used to because this space, tiny as it was mine. "Your mother's a wreck," he said. "Your sister's crying every day. This has gone on long enough. You threw me out." I was angry. "You filmed it." His face twitched. "I didn't think—" Exactly. That hit him. He shifted tone, trying a softer approach that sounded foreign on him. "Savannah, you know I only wanted you to stand on your own feet." I almost admired the rewrite. The audacity of a man to light a match, then describe the fire as motivation. "I am on my own feet," I said. "That's what's bothering you." He looked genuinely startled, and in that second I understood something. Control had always been easier for him when I still wanted his approval. Once I stopped reaching for it, he had nothing strong enough to pull me back. Then he stepped too close to the door and lowered his voice. "You're making me look like a monster. Not you hurt me, not I'm sorry, not I was wrong. That. You're making me look like a monster." I laughed right in his face. "I'm not making you look like anything. You did that yourself." He went red. "After all we did for you." "You mean, after all I did for you?" I said. "Who managed Mom's meds when she forgot? Who paid half the groceries? Who stayed home on weekends for deliveries, paperwork, the dog, the bills? Who?" He didn't answer because he couldn't. The silence between us was packed with every invisible task I'd ever carried while being told I was a burden. Then he said something uglier, quieter. "Families don't survive daughters like you." Maybe he meant disobedient daughters, witness daughters, daughters who stop kneeling under narratives built to crush them. I don't know. But I opened the door just wide enough to look him straight in the eye and said, "Then maybe the family you built shouldn't survive." He flinched, actually flinched. Behind him, Mrs. Delaney's porch light clicked on. One curtain across the street moved. Somebody was watching. Good. Let them. He tried one last move and reached for my hand through the door gap, but I stepped back. "Leave," I said. "Now. Savannah. Leave before I play the recording of you threatening me for this entire block." That ended it. He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Maybe because he was. Then he turned, walked to his truck, and drove off too fast. The second he disappeared around the corner, my knees weakened, but I didn't cry. I locked the door, leaned against it, and breathed through the adrenaline until it passed. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Mrs. Delaney. Proud of you. Also, your father peeled out like an idiot and nearly hit a trash can. 20 minutes after that, Noah called and stayed on speaker while I washed dishes, just so I wouldn't sit in the dark replaying everything. Then came one more text, this time from an old neighbor. Not trying to stir anything, but your dad's getting talked about pretty hard. People heard enough tonight to put things together. Again, nothing cartoonish happened. No instant collapse. No unbelievable punishment. Just the steady social cost of being publicly recognized as the man who threw out his daughter and then tracked her down still demanding obedience. And for men like Richard, that kind of exposure bites deeper than yelling ever could. I won't lie and say I felt nothing. There was grief in it. There always is when you close a door on a parent, even one who forced your hand. But there was also something dangerously close to relief. So let me ask the question most people are too polite to say out loud. When your father stands outside begging for control in the language of family, and you still shut the door, are you cruel? Or are you finally tasting what power feels like after years without any? A week later came the event that tied everything together. An animal rescue fundraiser in the park near my old neighborhood. Our hospital sponsored it every spring, and because I'd joined the surgical track program, Dr. Mercer asked me to represent the clinic at the intake tent. I considered refusing the assignment when I realized where it was being held. Then I found out my parents were attending a community picnic happening on the other side of the same park as part of a neighborhood association drive. Of course they were. Richard Brooks loved a setting with witnesses. So I went. Not for closure, not for reconciliation. For my job, my future, and because I was done rearranging my life to avoid the people who had tried to break it. I wore clean navy scrubs with the hospital logo, clipped on my new badge, tied my hair back, and spent the first hour checking in foster dogs, answering questions from families, and helping a little boy overcome his fear of touching a tripod pit mix named Rosie. I was good at what I did. Calm, competent, useful in ways that had nothing to do with serving my family's ego. Around noon, I saw them across the field, my mother at a folding table, my sister holding paper plates, my father laughing too loudly with two neighbors, performing normal so hard it looked painful. Then somebody noticed me in uniform. Not as the daughter on the lawn, as the veterinary professional helping run an event. That changed the air instantly. One woman I recognized from across the street walked right up and said, "Savannah, honey, I had no idea you worked in emergency animal care. That's wonderful." Wonderful. Funny word, considering the last time she saw me my belongings were in the grass. Another neighbor asked if it was true I was in a specialty training program. Dr. Mercer, who had overheard, answered for me. "She's one of the best techs we have." Loud enough for anybody nearby to hear. My father heard. I know he did, because when I looked over, his smile was gone. Public humiliation had introduced me one way. Public competence was now introducing me another. And unlike his little porch performance, this version came with witnesses who respected me. My sister approached first. Tessa looked rough, less smug than before, mascara too heavy like she'd been sleeping badly. "Can we talk?" she asked. I said, "You can talk." She glanced back toward our parents and lowered her voice. "Everything's been insane. He yells all the time now. Mom keeps crying. People keep asking questions." I let that sit. Then she blurted, "I didn't think it would go this far." There it was. Not quite accountability, but closer than anything I'd gotten before. "You kicked my bag into the street," I said. She swallowed. "I know." "You laughed." Her eyes filled instantly. "I know." I believed she regretted it. I also knew regret does not erase impact. "You don't get to borrow me as a sister only when the house gets ugly," I told her. "That ugliness existed before I left. You just weren't standing where I was standing." She started crying right there beside the rescue booth while families carried puppies past us. Not dramatic movie crying, humiliating, can't hide it crying. A few minutes later, my mother came over, face tight and brittle. "Please," she whispered, looking around to see who might be watching. "Not here." I almost smiled at that, because not here was exactly the luxury they denied me when they put my life on display. "You made it here," I said. "All of it." My mother looked at my badge, my clipboard, my coworkers, and something in her expression cracked. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was just the realization that I had built a version of myself none of them had any hand in. Then my father finally crossed the grass. No big scene, no screaming. That was over now that the audience might not choose him. He stopped a few feet away and said, "You look busy." It was such a small sentence, but packed with defeat. I nodded. "I am." He looked at the adoption tables, the doctors, the families, the people greeting me by name. For once, he didn't seem to know which script applied. Strict father, wronged parent, public victim. None of them fit. Because the truth standing in front of him was simple. The daughter he'd tried to reduce to a burden had become harder to diminish the moment she stepped outside his house. He cleared his throat. "People have been talking." "Yes," I said. "They do that when they watch a man throw his daughter's things on a lawn." My mother closed her eyes. My sister stared at the ground. He looked like he wanted to argue, to revise, to say it had all been blown out of proportion, but that argument requires power, and power hates witnesses who have already made up their minds. "I didn't think," he started. "I know," I said. "That's the problem." We stood there a moment in the bright afternoon, surrounded by barking dogs, paper streamers, and neighbors pretending not to listen. Then I gave them the only thing I was willing to give, the truth, without comfort. "I'm not coming back. I'm not fixing your house. I'm not stepping into that role again. What happened to you after I left is not something I did to you. It's what was already there when I stopped carrying it." Nobody argued. Not even Richard. Because he knew. My sister wiped her face and whispered, "I'm sorry." This time I believed she meant it. My mother opened her mouth like she wanted to ask for more. A visit, a phone call, some soft promise that this was only temporary, but I spared her. "Maybe one day we can talk," I said. "But it won't be because you need me to make things easier. It'll be because you learned how not to treat me like I'm disposable." Then Dr. Mercer called my name from the next table, and I turned back to work. That was the ending they deserved. Not me collapsing into their arms, not a perfect reunion, not a cruel speech for applause. Just me choosing my own life in front of them while they understood, maybe for the first time, that they were no longer the center of it. Later, when the event was ending and the park had started to empty, I stood alone by my car and opened the old recording from the night on the lawn. My father's voice, my sister's laugh, my mother's silence. I listened for 5 seconds, then deleted it. Not because they deserved mercy, because I didn't need the proof anymore. The consequences had already arrived. My father had become a man people looked at differently. My sister had learned too late that cruelty done for family approval still counts as cruelty. My mother had discovered that neutrality in abuse is not innocence. And me? I learned the hardest thing of all. Sometimes leaving your family is not betrayal. Sometimes it is the only way to save yourself and force them to face what they are without you there to absorb it. I used to think family was forever no matter what. Now I think love that only exists when you stay small isn't love at all. If they only value the obedient version of you, the useful version of you, the silent version of you, then walking away may be the first honest thing you ever do. And here's the question I want to leave with you. Would you be brave enough to leave the people who keep calling your suffering love? Or are you still enduring it because you're afraid of being called ungrateful?